Few have the courage to face Machiavelli's cruelest rule, the one not found in books, but in the subtext of real life. No one wins by being emotionally predictable. The world doesn't reward the good, it rewards the lucid. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, has always exacted a high price from those who insist on acting as if the world were just. And that's why so many are dominated, not by force, but by naivete. Machiavelli wasn't talking about evil, he was talking about conscience. The end justifies the means, because the means are the survival of the awakened. The man who doesn't understand this still lives as a servant, reacting, explaining, asking permission to exist. The rule is simple, but brutal. Learn to be untouchable, or you will be manipulated by those who already understand the game. The time of idealists is over. Now, the field belongs to those who see true human nature and play accordingly. Machiavelli didn't preach chaos. He taught how to dance within it. And whoever masters their own chaos masters everything. People test you, fate provokes you, and life observes you. And in the midst of all this, there is a choice. Continue asking for comfort or start calculating. Virtu and fortuna, mind and instinct, discipline and adaptation. This is the trinity of modern power. This video isn't about politics, it's about mental survival. It's about how to stop being manipulated by emotions, people, and circumstances. It's about the rule no one teaches you, because they prefer you remain docile. But Machiavelli wasn't speaking to the docile. He was speaking to those who had been betrayed, broken, discarded, and yet still decided to rise up with cold eyes and a silent heart. The cruelest rule is also the most liberating. Never let them dominate your mind. Subscribe to the channel and become mentally strong and unwavering. There are moments when life doesn't ask permission, it simply breaks you. It's the sudden, unannounced blow, the loss that arrives without a date, the disappointment that dismantles the ego and rips the ground from under your feet. Machiavelli would call this the royal field of the politics of the soul, where idealistic rules die and human nature bears its teeth. When everything collapses, that's when man discovers whether his mind is a castle or a makeshift shelter. Pain is the most honest test of character, the point where speech ceases and action speaks. Most people beg for comfort, but strategists learn to calculate. The end justifies the means, Machiavelli said, not as a license for cruelty, but as a warning that survival requires emotional intelligence and a certain detachment from self-pity. This is where the game changes. Pain isn't meant to be worshipped, but deciphered. It's a test that separates those who merely feel from those who interpret. Suffering, when properly understood, yields data. It shows patterns, reveals weaknesses, indicates what needs to die. Machiavelli believed that power is born from clarity about true human nature, and that includes yours. Pain shows you where vanity still exists, where the ego still begs for recognition. Transforming it into precision is what the great ones do. They don't ask for anesthesia, they ask for clarity. It's politics guided by reality, not by ideals. And the more you observe, the less you react. Pain becomes sharpening, and discomfort becomes training for inner strength. The phrase, "pain sharpens my power," is not a metaphor, it's a method. Just as a general trains under the weight of his shield, the man who desires mastery must endure the fire of refinement. Want to apply this practically? Stop running from the discomforts that shape you. Read biographies of those who fell and rebuilt themselves, Napoleon, Churchill, Steve Jobs. Remain silent instead of justifying yourself. Write down your reactions when you are betrayed. This is civilized psychological warfare, the calculated use of force against oneself, because whoever masters their own collapse masters any circumstance. And perhaps, without realizing it, you are already being prepared for something greater, something that will require not comfort, but control. The difference between an ordinary man and a strategist lies in what he does when he feels discomfort. The former seeks anesthesia, turns on the TV, opens his cell phone, consumes dopamine. The latter seeks control, observes the discomfort, calculates, adjusts his mind. Machiavelli would say that this is where politics guided by reality, not by ideals, begins. Because those who seek comfort lose control, and those who seek control will inevitably have to give up immediate pleasure. Weak minds want to feel good. Strong minds want to become unshakable. And this choice is not philosophical, it's physiological. Reprogramming reactions is the most arduous training, but also the most rewarding. When emotion ceases to be the driver, destiny finally changes. Cutting off the anesthetics is the first step for those who want real power, not the theatrical power of apparent virtue, but the silent power of those who master their own impulses. That is virtù and fortuna, acting with strategic courage, even when the wind is against you. Machiavelli wasn't talking about castles and crowns, he was talking about self-control disguised as politics. He knew that a man governed by vices, validation, pornography, compulsion, the need for approval, is spiritually surrendered. The end justifies the means, but only when the means are discipline. Want a practical example? Turn off notifications, reduce stimuli, exchange noise for deep reading. Whoever controls the focus controls the narrative, and whoever controls the narrative wins the game. Pleasure is the most sophisticated trap of the century. Comfort sells itself as freedom, but it enslaves. While the world chases after dopamine, strategists train serotonin. Consistency, routine, focus. It's like Machiavelli said about avoiding being hated. The moderate man lives longer. In the mental realm, this means avoiding being dominated by one's own emotions. Reprogramming reactions is like changing the operating system of the soul. It hurts, it freezes, it restarts. But when it works, you realize that nothing external controls you anymore. What once destabilized you now only informs you. And when you reach that point, a new frontier emerges, learning to train your mind beyond emotion. Emotion is the blind spot of any strategist. It is through emotion that the adversary finds openings, and it is through emotion that man betrays himself. Machiavelli, observing the game of power, realized that predictable emotion is an exploitable weakness. The ruler who reacts with anger surrenders the throne. The soldier who falters loses the war before the first blow. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, begins with inner mastery. Training the mind beyond emotion is learning to feel without submitting. It is not about turning to stone, but about becoming a mirror, reflecting the world without absorbing its poisons. The end justifies the means when the means are lucidity. He who detaches himself from the emotional theater becomes illegible, and in illegibility lies power. Emotional discipline is a muscle, and like any muscle, it requires constant training. Imagine yourself in a tense meeting. Voices rise, the atmosphere heats up. The average person reacts, the strategist breathes. Instead of responding, he observes. This is the calculated use of force, saving mental energy for where it is truly useful. Machiavelli would say that the man who masters his own reaction governs his own destiny. A simple practice. Before reacting, count to 10 and observe the impulse. This seems banal, but it is a psychic revolution. Over time, you realize that emotion doesn't need to disappear, only obey. Virtù and fortuna, after all, is this: using chaos to your advantage. Like the sailor who adjusts the sail instead of cursing the wind. The biggest mistake people make when seeking control is confusing serenity with coldness. Machiavelli would warn, avoid being hated, but don't worry about being loved. See, in emotional practice, this means maintain empathy, but not dependence. The mind that transcends emotion is not heartless, it is purposeful. Calmness is not the absence of feeling, it is a hierarchy of response. And when you understand this, something changes. The world stops moving you and you begin to move the world. It is the birth of the psychological strategist, and it is at this moment that the next challenge arises. Rewrite the narrative or remain destroyed. The human mind is a storyteller, and almost always a terrible one. It distorts, dramatizes, and becomes addicted to tragic repetitions. Machiavelli would understand this as the internal theater of power, the illusion of control while being governed by old beliefs. Rewriting the narrative is a political act of the soul. It is to overthrow a corrupt government within oneself and establish a new mental regime, guided by reality, not by ideals. The end justifies the means when the means is self-mastery. While the common man asks himself, why did this happen to me? The strategist asks, how can I use this to my advantage? He understands that perception is power, and whoever controls their own perception rewrites their destiny. The victim sees tragedy, the strategist sees training. This difference changes everything. When someone betrays you, you can cling to the pain or see a map in it, where you were deceived, where you ignored signs, where you projected virtues the other person never possessed. Machiavelli would call this decisions based on real human nature, and that includes admitting that everyone has a shadow, including you. Rewriting the narrative is not denying the pain, but repositioning it on the board. It's realizing that each humiliation can be fuel, each fall an invisible investment. A practical example: transform your memories into written lessons. Document the chaos, revisit it as an analyst, not as a victim. The written word is the thinker's sword. Silence also rewrites stories. When you stop justifying, the world begins to guess, and that is power. Machiavelli spoke about the appearance of virtue. Show calm, but never despair. Speak less and achieve more. Every word saved is a blow not delivered, but felt. It is at this point that the mind begins to change roles, from patient to strategist. And when you realize that your narrative is not what happened to you, but what you chose to interpret, something rare is born: psychic independence. However, there is an invisible enemy that still needs to be overcome: attachment, that invisible chain that prevents the rise of true inner power. Attachment is the most sophisticated form of emotional slavery. It disguises itself as love, loyalty. I can't live without this, but at its core, it's just fear. Fear of losing what was never truly yours. Machiavelli, who saw the world through the lens of politics guided by reality, not ideals, would understand attachment as an unstable alliance with fortune. Everything that depends on external factors is condemned to fluctuation. That's why he said, it's better to be feared than loved. Love changes with time. Fear maintains respect. Translating this to the internal realm, it's better to be respected for yourself than to live seeking approval. Killing attachment is cutting the cord that keeps you tied to chaos. Peace that depends on something or someone is a comfortable illusion. Today, it's affection, tomorrow it's despair. Machiavelli called this luck, and luck for him was the prostitute of power. It changes master with the wind. The strategist, on the other hand, builds his own loyal armies, internal, not external. It is his values, principles, and routines that form his army. Want practical examples? Meditate every day. Write down what you feel instead of unloading it on others. Have a personal plan for advancement that doesn't depend on the recognition of others. The calculated use of force, in this case, is emotional, resisting the temptation to explain yourself. The less you need to prove, the freer you become. Emotional independence is the invisible fortress of those who seek real power. Machiavelli knew that a ruler who needs to be loved to rule has already lost his throne. The same is true for the man who needs approval to exist. He has already been conquered even before the battle. Constant adaptability is the antidote. Changing without losing your balance, loving without kneeling, helping without emptying yourself. It is at this point that true inner power is born, when you realize that everything that is yours cannot be taken away, and everything that can be taken away was never yours. And it is then, when attachment dies, that the most feared force of all emerges: control, the supreme discipline that separates mortals from strategists. Few understand that true control isn't over others, it's over oneself. Machiavelli said that a prince without discipline is a ship adrift. Any wind can dominate it. The same applies to the mind. When you let yourself be carried away by impulses, you are governed by your own weakness. But when you establish a mental distance between stimulus and reaction, you begin to master the invisible field of power. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands this brutal self-control, seeing the world as it is, not as you would like it to be. Discipline is not punishment, it is self-protection. The end justifies the means when the means is calculated silence, the kind of silence that observes the chaos and responds only when the blow is precise. Acting without being seen is the art of the strategist. Machiavelli called this the calculated use of force, not wasting energy on battles that bring no real gain. In practice, it means learning to wait, not to justify oneself, to cut off without hesitation when something threatens your focus. Control is invisible power. It's the executive who speaks little, but when he does, the room falls silent. It's the man who doesn't need to react to provocations because he masters the internal chessboard. A practical exercise. Choose a habit that dominates you: coffee, social media, validation, and impose a 48-hour break. Observe the discomfort. This discomfort is your true enemy. Whoever masters it wins wars without shedding blood. Supreme discipline is not rigidity, it is controlled malleability. Machiavelli saw in constant adaptability the highest virtue of those who desire lasting power, to be firm in purpose but flexible in execution. That's how you cut without hesitation, not out of coldness, but out of clarity. Each disciplined decision is a vow of loyalty to your own inner empire, and it is in this process that the mind begins to separate itself from the masses. While everyone seeks distraction, you seek mastery. Isolation, the inevitable consequence of this journey, is not punishment. It is the laboratory where kings are forged. Loneliness is frightening because it removes the noise that distracts us from ourselves. But it is precisely there that power is born. Machiavelli would understand isolation as the ruler's training ground, a place where masks fall and the mind becomes a mirror. When you choose to be alone, you are not running away from the world. You are purifying your own presence. The man who seeks wisdom withdraws not out of weakness, but out of strategy. It is there that he audits his own inner army, beliefs, habits, fears. He knows that one's own loyal armies begin within the mind. Politics, guided by reality, not by ideals, demands this silent phase of reconstruction. Because it is in silence that the noise of others dies and your own command begins to echo. Machiavelli said that fortune favors the prepared, and there is no more powerful preparation than chosen isolation. The prince who depends on the advice of others weakens his own judgment. Similarly, the modern man who needs digital validation loses his bearings. Isolation, when used well, is a laboratory. It is the space where one experiments with failure, recalculates, and rises again without an audience. Want a practical example? Take a whole day to be without contact with anyone. No messages, no networks, no distractions. Write, observe, breathe. You will realize how much your mind craves noise and how much your power grows when it doesn't receive it. Virtù and Fortuna are born from this alchemy, inner mastery and silent adaptation. Silence is an academy. In it, the strategist lifts invisible weights, the weight of doubt, rejection, impatience. Each day, these psychic muscles grow. The man who learns to be alone becomes illegible, and he who is illegible is free. Isolation forges kings because it forces the ego to die and conscience to assume the throne. And when this transition occurs, something changes. The external world ceases to have the power to define you. The transformation begins, and as Machiavelli knew, every true transformation is brutal, not beautiful, and almost always happens far from applause. Every rebirth is preceded by destruction. Machiavelli knew this better than anyone, for he saw power not as inheritance, but as constant reconstruction. Transformation is never beautiful because it requires amputating what once defined you. It is the silent process of letting the servant die and the strategist be born. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that evolving is not ascending, it is burning. He who seeks only the shine does not understand the fire that produces it. When life dismantles your certainties, it is merely replacing the wooden foundations with stone. And while the common man weeps for what he has lost, the wise man observes what is being forged. The end justifies the means when the means is pain-shaping character. Silent reconstruction is the mark of the strong. Machiavelli would say that those who boast about change haven't changed yet. They seek applause, not power. The true strategist transforms in secret, planning while the world considers him defeated. He knows that the calculated use of force also applies to his own rebirth. It's like the blacksmith forging a sword. The longer it spends in the fire, the more resistant it becomes. Want a practical example? When you feel that everything has crumbled, don't rush to seek new beginnings. Wait, observe, plan. This interval is the cradle of clarity. It is there that the ego ceases the noise and the mind begins to build with precision. The man who undergoes this journey realizes he was never destroyed, only purified. He understands the meaning of virtù and fortuna, to be firm in the face of chaos and flexible in the face of destiny. It is at this point that the strategist is born and the servant dies forever. The transformation is cruel but necessary, because only he who survives the fire can govern without fear. And while many try to reopen what destroyed them, the true prince learns to let the past burn without looking back. However, the pain does not fade. It transforms into precision. Each wound becomes data, each failure a map. And this is how power that does not depend on luck is born, the power that calculates. Machiavelli would never romanticize pain, he would study it. For him, suffering was just another factor in the equation of power. And that's exactly what the strategic mind does. It transforms pain into precision. While the common man seeks anesthesia, the strategist seeks information. Each wound is a detailed report on vulnerabilities, patterns, and blind spots. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands this clinical eye on its own chaos, because whoever understands where the coup comes from begins to predict the next one. Pain, then, ceases to be punishment and becomes a compass. The end justifies the means when the means are the painful learning that eliminates naivete. Those who learn to read suffering as data live with more power and less drama. Machiavelli called this constant adaptability, the talent of transforming defeat into advantage. A practical example: when something or someone disappoints you, don't ask why me, but what is this showing me? Note your reactions, discover the trigger, calculate the pattern. Virtù and fortuna are born from this lucidity. The man who knows himself ceases to be predictable. and the unpredictable is always feared. Use pain as a lens, not as a crutch. Each intense emotion is precious information about where you still lack control. And the more control you have, the less suffering. Pain is the laboratory of psychological mastery. It is there that the calculated use of force is practiced, responding coldly instead of reacting with wounds. Those who transform pain into precision no longer seek revenge, but self-improvement. And that is power. The kind of power Machiavelli saw in leaders who knew when to attack and, above all, when to wait. It's an internal chess game. Each cold move is born from a hot scar. And when the game is internal, there is no defeat, only data. The mind begins to function like a strategy machine, predictable to itself, illegible to others. And it is in this state that coldness ceases to be the absence of feeling and becomes the presence of power. Machiavelli knew that the world is a chessboard, not a field of flowers. To be cold is not to be cruel, it is to be lucid. Coldness is the state of one who has learned to foresee pain, and therefore is no longer shaken by it. The man who acts with emotion is predictable. The one who acts with calculation is inevitable. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that feeling is human, but reacting is optional. When the mind is trained to analyze instead of dramatizing, it becomes a fortress. The end justifies the means, because the means are mastery over one's own chaos. Coldness is merely focus with controlled temperature, and focus is the new form of strength. Life is a game of predictions. He who anticipates the blow does not bleed. He who lives distracted rots in the hands of fortune. Machiavelli would call this the art of anticipation. It is predicting the mistake before it happens, the risk before it hurts. A cool mind acts with protocol, not with panic. It breathes, decides, filters, positions itself, daily like a ritual of power. Want a practical exercise? Start the day by mentally reviewing 3 possible unforeseen events and decide how you will react to each one. When the unexpected arrives, you will have already won. This is virtu and fortuna in their purest form. The courage to adapt, but without losing your balance. To be cold is to be strategic. It's to look at the enemy and see in them the same fear that once paralyzed you. It's not confusing emotion with empathy. The calculated use of force is the epitome of Machiavelli's emotional intelligence, knowing when to speak and when to let silence work for you. The man who masters his own psychic temperature ceases to be manipulated. What wounds him is no longer the blow, but the lack of control. And when the lack of control dies, mastery is born. It is at this point that true power emerges, that which needs to prove nothing, only to exist. And from this coldness is born emotional immunity, the next level of the unshakable mind. Machiavelli would never advocate for inertia. He would advocate for dominance. Emotional immunity is not a lack of feeling, it's emotional hierarchy. It's the ability to absorb the impact without becoming the impact. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the world constantly tests its internal structure. Insults, delays, betrayal, all are rehearsals to measure its control. While most are offended, the strategist observes. He understands that reacting is surrendering territory and that every impulsive response is a successful invasion. Emotional immunity is the invisible wall of those who no longer need to prove anything. The end justifies the means when the means is a shielded peace. Absorbing without becoming altered is an art. Machiavelli called this prudence, the supreme attribute of a leader. The prudent man does not become agitated, he calculates. He audits everything that touches his energy before allowing it in. This applies to people, ideas, and even emotions. Want a practical example? When something irritates you, don't ask why. Ask, what for? This simple change transforms reaction into understanding. Virtù and fortuna operate on this subtlety. Emotion ceases to be a storm and becomes a compass. Over time, you realize that calmness is not weakness, it's strategy. Silence at this point is more persuasive than any speech. Emotional immunity is the shield that separates the wise from the impulsive. It makes you unreadable, and the unreadable is untouchable. Machiavelli said, "Avoid being hated." Translating this to the psychic realm, it means avoid hating, because hatred is the thread that keeps you bound to the enemy. The unwavering mind doesn't need to react. It understands, classifies, and follows. Each emotion is analyzed as a report, not as a sentence. And when this state becomes natural, revenge loses its meaning. What remains is preservation, the next stage of silent power. The average person confuses coldness with resentment, but Machiavelli knew true power does not seek revenge, it seeks order. The end justifies the means does not mean destruction, it means direction. When someone hurts you, the impulse to avenge is natural, but it is also what binds you to the one who attacked you. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the most dangerous enemy is the one who still occupies space within your mind. Preservation is the opposite of that. It is the art of absenting oneself without explaining, of cutting off without noise, of imposing distance without anger. Absence is a refined weapon. It creates a void where there was once power over you. He who has no access has no dominion. Machiavelli said that a wise ruler avoids being hated, but does not fear being misunderstood. The same applies in the emotional realm. Maintaining high standards is the most elegant way to eliminate inconsistency. Every imposed limit is an internal decree of sovereignty. Want a practical example? When someone shows disrespect, don't argue, disappear. Retreat is the diplomacy of the strong. Virtù and fortuna manifest themselves in this way, knowing when to act and when to retreat. The strategist doesn't waste ammunition explaining the obvious. He observes the movement, reads it, and adjusts the terrain. Preserving oneself is conserving energy for wars that truly matter. Clarity is a mirror, and that's what disarms. When your conscience is clear, others reveal themselves by contrast. Machiavelli called this knowing true human nature. The wise person doesn't seek revenge, they simply see. And seeing clearly is already a form of victory. The ego seeks revenge. Power seeks continuity. Preservation is strategic survival, a silent act of elevated self-love. Because whoever learns to withdraw at the right time never loses, they only change scenery. And when the scenery changes, the next lesson emerges, using one's own presence as a weapon. Machiavelli knew that the most effective power is the one that doesn't need to be announced. Presence is a silent force, and when well calibrated, it replaces any discourse. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, teaches that those who control their own energy field don't need to shout to be heard. Calmness, when accompanied by clarity, intimidates more than aggression. The man who masters his presence doesn't need to impose respect, he inspires it. And when that happens, even silence becomes strategic. The end justifies the means when the means is the quietude that speaks louder than 1,000 justifications. Machiavelli would call this the calculated use of invisible force. Commanding without speaking is the essence of authority. In a noisy world, those who speak little become a mystery. And mystery is magnetic. Want practical examples? When entering a room, speak only what is necessary. Maintain a steady gaze, an upright posture, and listen more than you respond. This is virtù and fortuna in practice, mastering one's own energy in attention-seeking environments. Illegibility is the new form of defense. If they can't predict your reactions, they can't manipulate you. When you become an indecipherable field, respect is a natural consequence. And if they still don't respect your presence, make them feel your absence. Absence, when it comes from a strategist, weighs more than 1,000 presences. Machiavelli said that avoiding being hated is prudence, but being feared is an advantage. In other words, whoever masters their own presence becomes a reference point. Whoever wastes it becomes noise. Magnetic power is born from controlling one's own rhythm, knowing when to appear and when to disappear. Presence is an invisible sword. It shines when you move, it cuts when you are silent, and whoever learns to wield it becomes untouchable. Because the mind that dominates space begins to dominate people, and the one that dominates people has already won the game before it even begins. Being untouchable isn't about hiding from the world, it's about walking through it without being contaminated. Machiavelli would call this the pinnacle of politics, guided by reality, not ideals, remaining present in the game without being devoured by it. The man who seeks real power needs to understand that excessive emotional vulnerability is fertile ground for manipulation. The end justifies the means when the means are strategic self-protection. Being untouchable is mastering one's own reflection, not reacting to provocations, not explaining oneself to those who have already decided to distort you. It's letting others fight against ghosts while you advance in silence. Machiavelli said, "Avoid being hated, and nothing awakens more hatred than the calmness of someone who is unshaken." Not reacting is the most sophisticated tactic. Silence disarms, confuses, and reveals. Broken expectations are psychological weapons that Machiavelli would understand as tools of control. When you respond less than expected, you demonstrate more power than they say. Want a practical example? When someone tries to provoke you, breathe and look them in the eye for 3 seconds before responding, if you respond at all. This interval creates discomfort in the other person and dominance in you. It's the calculated use of force in its most subtle form, transforming reaction into strategy. The untouchable person isn't cold, they're centered. And this serenity causes everyone around them to react to their energy, even without understanding why. True strength lies not in winning arguments, but in choosing which battles deserve your energy. Machiavelli would say that the intelligent prince doesn't attack every castle, only those that guarantee the throne. The untouchable man applies this to his inner world. He filters stimuli, protects his mind, and conserves his emotions. He understands that every emotional response is an investment, and that too much energy spent on the irrelevant impoverishes the spirit. The untouchable doesn't flee from the world. He observes it from above, and in observing, he learns Machiavelli's final law, that psychological warfare is a daily battle, and only those who control their own minds win. Machiavelli said that governing others is easy. The difficult part is governing oneself, and that's precisely where the ultimate law lies. Whoever controls their own mind controls the world. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, teaches that external chaos is merely a reflection of internal lack of control. The man who awakens to this stops fighting against the scenario and begins to master his posture. He understands that the war is not between people, but between impulses. And in this invisible battle, every reaction is a renunciation of power. The end justifies the means when the means is absolute self-control. The unwavering mind is not the one that doesn't feel, but the one that feels and still decides with clarity. Daily psychological warfare is inevitable. The difference lies in who wins it. Machiavelli knew that virtue and fortune are only balanced when there is mental discipline, acting when the time is right, retreating when it is prudent, and never being guided by momentary passions. The common man seeks to understand the world. The strategist seeks to understand himself. Want a practical example? Upon waking, ask yourself, who governs today, me or my mood? If it's my mood, you've already lost before you even begin. Mental discipline is the invisible army that protects your decisions. Every conscious choice is a victory on the inner battlefield. An unwavering mind is the throne of silent power. It is the state in which nothing external defines its axis. Fortune may change, but its virtue remains. The man who arrives here does not seek to dominate the world, but to understand it. He understands that every offense, delay, or obstacle is merely a test of consistency. And, in the end, he realizes what Machiavelli always tried to say. Real power is not political, it is psychological, because the world is governed by those who can remain calm while everyone else loses control. And when you reach that level, the game changes, not because the world becomes easier, but because you become unwavering. In the end, what Machiavelli tried to teach was never about politics. It was about self-mastery, because whoever governs their own mind is never governed by anyone else. The world will not become more just, people will not stop testing their limits, and life will not warn you before breaking you. But the strategist does not expect mercy. He creates strategy. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, is harsh, but it is real. It is what separates those who survive from those who collapse. And if the end justifies the means, let your end be freedom, and the means conscience. Now stop and ask yourself, how many times have you been overwhelmed by emotions that could have been observed? How many times have you reacted when you could have calculated? An unwavering mind is not born from theory. It is born from training. Every time you silence impulse and choose clarity, you are freeing yourself. Every time you reject drama and seek direction, you are ascending. Power begins where reactivity ends. And Machiavelli would be proud to see a man who stopped seeking comfort and began to command his own chaos. So if all of this made sense to you, apply it. Observe more, speak less, react less, calculate more. It's not coldness, it's intelligence. It's not arrogance, it's self-preservation. You don't need to dominate the world, you just need to become indomitable within it. And if this video reminded you of that, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because here, each new lesson is a sharp blade, made to cut what still keeps you weak.